Welcome. This is the VCF Musketeers, another new episode we are going to record, the podcast for all businesses utilizing or planning to utilize VMware Cloud Foundation. In today's episode, I have Tim as my special guest. Welcome, Tim. Why don't you quickly introduce yourself to the audience?
Thanks, Eve. Thanks for having me. I appreciate being here. My name is Tim Burkard. I have an alter ego called V Gandalf. You look like this, you got to have a name. I've been working with the networking side of VCF. I've been working. I came up with NSX and have been working with a VCF networking team in the past couple of years. As we kind of centralize our aspect of VCF and having Cloud Foundation available to everyone. I'm in the education field a little bit, and that's my 2 cents.
Good. So if you were to kind of do this wonderful elevator pitch, so in 60 seconds, how would you try to convince someone why every enterprise should use VMware Cloud Foundation for their private cloud before we get into all the technical details?
Well, I think the elevator pitch, and I'm not much of a salesman, Eve. I'll just give you that right up front. But the elevator pitch would be there is no better tool for virtualization anyway than what VMware by Broadcom brings to the table. And so you put that virtualization construct all together in one package and allow us to handle the compute and the networking and the storage all in one place and manage it through a simple operational model, the cloud operational model that allows for automation to take place and allows for monitoring to take place, it allows for everything all at once in the virtualization platform that's unequaled anywhere in the world. That'd be my 60 seconds.
And I think that is what the private cloud is. It just basically gives you the best what you know from public cloud and what people know there, but without all the unpredictable costs, because you have a clear cost structure once you get into the private cloud. And that gives people exactly what they are looking for. It's like there are enough enterprises which were surprised with public cloud bills in the last couple of years. It's like everybody only looked at one cost aspect. It's like, what is my EC2 instance or something else going to cost? And then all these additional costs, and there is a transit gateway, there's this, there's that. And all of a sudden you have a bill which is 10 times as high as than you originally expected. But we don't want to play the public cloud game tonight or today. So you said your background is around networking. So what really makes you go crazy? What do you think is really important? What people should know, what they get with NSX as part of VCF, and what they should really actually look into to make their infrastructure more modernized and more digital?
Well, first off, I would just say that NSX itself brings to VCF the whole idea of more ability to get things done faster. The ability to take that virtualized platform and virtualize the network to go along with it. And now when we have in our private cloud, we've got all of our workloads and they can all communicate with each other much more efficiently than they could if I had to hairpin out into the underlay to get there. So that the overlay aspect of NSX is very important as far as any software defined data center would be. I know we don't use that term as much anymore, but if you're in the private cloud, you've got workloads that need to talk to each other, and they talk much more efficiently within an NSX platform. What really gets my juices flowing, if I could say such a thing, Eve, is the idea and the concept that we have here in VCF of a virtual private cloud. Now, a virtual private cloud isn't something that is new to the world, and many of you that are listening have probably heard of VPCs in the past. But what we've done in the private cloud is to allow the virtual private cloud to let the administrator who's used to working in the infrastructure plane to identify and say, okay, I want to have an isolated network for a new application that I'm going to run. And previously, I'd have to go get with my network team and I have to set some sort of gateway so that I could get out into the world. And then I have to set VLANs up or set up some sort of net. Well, I don't have to do that anymore. In a virtual private cloud, or VPC, when we set up our connectivity, our network connectivity, I can do that in a distributed form, which basically, for anybody that's worked with NSX before, means I don't have to build a bunch of edges and I don't have to have an edge cluster. In distributed gateway, I'm distributing my connectivity to the outside world. And so with that's being done, and I'm a vSphere admin and I say, I want to build this new application, I'd like to have, maybe it's a 3-tier application and I need a web and an application and a database, and I need those all to be done, and the application is going to be running. And with the VPC, I just say, set this up. Give me this private segment that won't be accessible from the outside world. So I'm building security into it as well. And then I need an application, and that application just has to be accessible from my web and has to have access to the database. And I basically make a segment for the application, make a segment for the web that's going to be published. It's going to have outside access. And so I've done that, and I've done it myself in the interface. I know we aren't really talking technical so much here, but it took less than 5 minutes to build the whole thing out. Now, I granted I have a little bit of network experience, but I could show anybody how to do that in 5 minutes. I mean, it's really that straightforward and that simple. That's a very exciting way to be able to build the networking constructs that are necessary for developers, for any even production networks, to be able to be put into place in a very quick, fast, and secure method. So I get pretty excited about that. It's kind of fun.
And it is necessary, I think, that we get excited about these different building blocks, because in the end, it's like everybody knows that we can virtualize compute. That's easy. That's what we have been doing for the last 20 years, even though when we currently see how some of the competitors are fighting to replicate features like vMotion. And I lately had a discussion where someone said, it's like, yeah, you can't actually you can't move a running full-blown database server from one host to another. And I said, it's like, yes, you can. You just have the wrong platform below it. If you can't do that, then that's maybe the reason why you should potentially think about switching back, because that was possible. But I think what we see now is storage abstraction is nice and easy. There's not that much to worry about from a vSAN perspective. You need to do some planning, but nowadays with NVMEs and stuff like that, it is straightforward. But the challenge I think every corporation nowadays sees is the complexity we get in the network side. And a lot of that complexity comes from physical to virtual separation. And this is something which all the public clouds had to manage. From my perspective, one of the reasons why so many people were also moving to the public cloud was because of, as you just described, you just press a button and all of a sudden you have a network. You press another button, you have a firewall, you have routing. You have all these features and you can utilize them. Because in many cases, let's face it, there are not 15,000 sophisticated rules behind all of that, because as you described, it's like there is an application, there is a database server, there is a web server or something like that, or maybe 2 applications or whatsoever. But it's relatively straightforward to connect these with each other. And I think that's in all also the security discussions we nowadays have. And I think by now everybody has figured out that security is important, because it's like it's nearly every week there is a security incident somewhere, and people need to understand that a lot of that security is depending on the fact that you do not actually have 15,000 operating systems running on one flat network. You need to separate the networks. That is where complexity comes in, and this is where tools like NSX can clearly help and make life easier. But also, let's face it, it's like I was asked in a couple of weeks back in an interview, it's like, why do you think that VMware is going to be around in the long term? And I said, it's like, first, there's all the R&D on the new developments, as much as everybody keeps saying, it's like Broadcom is not doing that, la-di-la-di-la-di. But reality is, beside the new developments, there is an important part why VMware is what VMware is, and that is legacy workloads. And these legacy workloads are not going to go away. Why are people still complaining about Windows 2008 being gone? By the way, 2008 was the year this operating system was basically put to market, or 2003 is like. Well, that is something what people sometimes tend to forget, as my feeling. But the reality is, many of the enterprises out there have a lot of these legacy workloads. Period. We can all come around and constantly saying it's like all is going to be cloud native, all is going to be web-based application, but that is not the reality out there. It's like that works if you are a startup, if you are building something fancy up in the Bay Area and sit in a coffee shop and build your new application, which is fine for me. But the reality is, for all these family-owned businesses, for all these long-standing enterprises, 50, 100 years old enterprises, it's like they have legacy applications and they will not go away. The same is like, how long did my IBM call the AS400 dead? It's like it's still there and it's still not dead. And it's the same for a lot of these legacy applications. And to be fair, the best way to protect these legacy applications from my personal point of view is if we apply microsegmentation, because that's the best way to protect that little box as close as possible. And I see I get you enthusiastic again.
Yeah. Well, first thing, I just want to say that my journey with VMware is 15 years or something. And when I first saw vMotion, which you mentioned just a minute ago, it was like, oh my goodness gracious, how does this happen? So that was my first wow, gotcha moment with VMware. My second one was a thing called a distributed firewall. And that distributed firewall, now it's called, it's part of vDefend now. It is an add-on, but it's part of our NSX infrastructure that puts a firewall at each workload. Each workload has its own firewall, and that sounds like it could be very complex. But as you just said, you go click, boop, what's allowed? Done. It's done. It's not. There's some thought process, just like you said with vSAN. You got to plan it. You got to think about it. But once the thought process is done, it's a very straightforward thing to be able to do, where you group your workloads appropriately. And with those groups, you can apply firewall rules to the groups, and the communication that's taking place that is protected right at the virtual NIC for the workload, for the VM. As you mentioned, there are still, I would say, the vast majority of applications that are running from our customer base is running on virtual machines. It's not running on containers, not completely yet. We're moving that way, and that's certainly something that takes place. But the container workloads and the virtual machine workloads can all be protected with this distributed firewall. So vDefend, and then advanced threat protection that goes along with it, to be able to take full advantage of, in the hypervisor, in the memory space of those hosts, to take advantage of protecting those workloads as they take place. It was the second wow moment that I got when working in the VMware platform, for sure.
And I think it's the important part is really is, as you described, it's actually attached at the VNIC. And that is a very, very important thing, because people say it's like, but why can't I do that with so many other vendors? And what most other vendors do is they install an additional module as part of your operating system and stuff like that. And still, the problem is with whatever you do as part of the operating system, if that operating system gets affected, you cannot be secure that all of that is still in place. The only place to make this work is at the NIC, because many of these legacy applications have also a weird requirement. What else needs to be on the same network segment? And all these things, we cannot actually put them in a separate network segment in most cases. And that is where features like that distributed firewall combined with advanced threat protection and all the new things which were just announced in the last couple of weeks and months is they are going to help these enterprises secure all of these workloads.
But that's absolutely correct. With everything that's coming on, and then you start talking about the ransomware things that we can protect ourselves from. We've got site protection. We've got ransomware protection. We've got cyber recovery. We've really built this platform. You remember our former CEO who always said it's got to be built in, not bolted on. And that was that was one of those statements that was like, well, yeah, it just made so much sense. And we've built this platform securely from the ground up. And we talk about things like VPCs, we talk about things like DFW. Those are all things that take place basically in the kernel, in the core of the memory space that's providing the virtualization. So you can't do it better in another place, and it's much more efficient for sure.
And so I think it's really this was what's rounding all of that up from a customer perspective. And the good part is, and that's what we tell most people, is like as you move now to VCF, it's a lot easier to actually get all of this on the ground. It's like when I look at the early days of NSX, installing all the modules and then updating them and getting all of that to work in the ESXi and all the other bits and pieces we had to do. That was a lot more complex. But now it's basically, when we look at VCF 9, it's basically, yeah, it's not yet 100% point and click. But is when you consider what you get is like you install your ESXi, you install your SDDC manager, apply your key, and you're basically off you go. And that is why I also tell every customer at the moment is like, when you look at VCF 9, even if you are not planning utilizing NSX, let's at least do the baseline setup so that you can start immediately utilizing it. And you see more and more people thinking about it. And I think this will finally drive the adoption up much more easily, as people are talking about that. But when I look back the last couple of years with the old NSX versions, it's like, how many discussions did we have about which license package do we need to use? And do we really want to have this feature? Is it really worth that we have that? That discussion is gone. It's like, yeah, there are a few add-ons now, but besides that, the baseline discussion is there. It's automatically deployed with the hosts. All of the features are there. You can start using it out of the gate. And I think that's really the beauty of it. And I think that is one of the reasons why companies, as they are looking into rebuilding, remodernizing their stack, they should directly look into VCF and don't even think about, it's like, oh, do I go from vSphere 7 to 8? It's like, if there is no good reason to not go to 9, it's like, let's have a very close look into it, and let's start there and get you there, because I think there is so much to win for enterprises at the moment. And once you are there, the next upgrades are going to be a lot easier than if we go down the old path now anymore.
I know in previous episodes you talked about some of the other things that operations brought into place, but from a security standpoint, just certificate management is one of those those headaches that your IT team has been working with for forever. And the simplification of the management of the certificates might be the deal thrower right there. Is that, oh, are you kidding? This is all centralized and all of my equipment is managed with certificates that are handled in a local single location? Game changer. From
certificates, password rotation, all these wonderful things. There is so much easy win and automatically adoption of operations on all the hosts and all of these different pieces. So I think it is now the time, and that's what we hear from all customers. And also, I had a discussion with Paul Turner the other day, and he said it's like VCF 9 is the first version which was adopted that quickly in VMware's past history. Because normally in the past, people actually looked at new versions, but it took typically a year or more than a year for a major release to be adopted. And currently it's more as like people scratching on the door is like, can I have it? Can I have it? Can I have it? Is there any good reason why I should not use it?
Everybody was always, well, I'll wait till .1. I'll wait till .1. And that didn't happen this time. I mean, the 9.0 is being adopted at an incredible pace. because of all the simplification it actually brings. And we know we heard Hock Tan talking about simplification and going. And you mentioned just a little while ago that you had to decide on this license, that license, this license, that license, and it was very complex and thousands of SKUs to choose from. And yeah, that's all gone. That's all gone. And it's made life truly simpler from a consumption standpoint with VCF 9. And we're still working. They're still innovating. They're still planning on improvements. So it's an exciting time to be with VMware for me at least.
Good. So before we close, final thought is like if you run into a CIO or someone like that, it's like, and he's currently on the fence of like, do I really want to stay with VMware and VCF, or should I go with platform A, B, or C? To not name them in directly, is like, what would you suggest what they should look into? I know it's going to be most likely in the networking space, but what would be your argument in this? Like, it's like this is really what you should look for in VCF, what potentially is really differentiating us, not to actually show something which is, yeah, just because the others can't do it, but really more is like, where is it really adding to the business? Because in the end, as much as we hate it in IT, but we are not there for the sake of operating IT. We are here to run and support a business and actually make businesses go faster and be better and more secure. So what would be kind of the one or two things you would ask every CIO to look into when they are on the fence for it?
Well, one thing, and it's sort of you sort of led me in this direction, but one thing is the maturity of where we are and what we have to offer, and you can compare to A or B or C or D. You won't find the maturity and the capabilities that we offer. And from a networking standpoint and a security standpoint, the platform is built ground up with networking and security in mind. And the workloads that we have, and you mentioned the legacy workloads that our customers are still working with, they need to be able to connect and need to be able to protect. And VCF offers that par excellence. And now if we got a lot of our hero numbers around there. There's all kinds of studies that have been done for a improved return on investment. But the return on investment, there's study after study after study that says VCF 9 in comparison even to a vSphere platform with some additional add-ons that have been done, or compare to A and B and C, or even D, the return on investment that you get in the VCF platform is really unequaled. It is an extremely cost beneficial way. As you mentioned, Eve, we're not in the business as IT, we're not making money. The company is making money doing what the company does. All IT is there is to support that at the most cost efficient manner feasible. And that's what VCF brings to the table, I think.
Thank you. I couldn't close this any better. Thank you, Tim, for joining today. I'm looking forward that potentially we have you on another episode at a later point in time and we go into some more details. Thank you for joining and have a wonderful day.
Happy to be here. Thanks a lot for having me. Good to see you again.